at home on school nights. I'm going to start out a little bit with a PowerPoint presentation. So that's what you're seeing on the screen. And then as we go through the presentation, I'm going to stop and ask if there are questions so that you can enter those in the chat box. I don't want to move forward if there are questions and concerns. So welcome this evening. I'm Paula Plant, and I'm the director of the School Children's Trust section at the State Board of Education. And our responsibilities are to administer the School Land Trust program and provide training for councils and support councils in any way that we can. And then we're also required to take care of compliance and make sure that schools are complying with the laws and the rules. So I'm going to go ahead and start. It looks like we have Jennifer, Jessica on the line. We've had a couple of others that look like maybe they've dropped off. So we'll go ahead. If we don't have more people than this, we can just have more and more open conversation. So thank you, first of all, for agreeing to be on your school community council and agreeing to serve as the chair. Are you both chairs? I guess that's a question you can't answer unless I unmute you. But the first thing I want to be really clear about is that there are no specific requirements for a vice chair. And the responsibility of a vice chair really is to just support the chair and the responsibilities that they have. And you'll see as we go through that there are quite a few. So to start, I just want to make sure, let's see, okay. So this is the School Children's Trust section at the State Board of Education. I'm Paula. Natalie Gordon is providing a training at the same time, just generally about the responsibilities of councils. And we're going to be talking more specifically about the responsibilities of chairs. And then Karen Rupp, and Karen primarily works with charter schools. So we often get involved in the discussions about what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And it's important that we remember the purpose of school community councils to start with. And that is they were created by the legislature to create a forum for principals and parents and educators to work together. The School Land Trust program is primarily for academic achievement of students, but of course, there are many other things that councils can do for their schools and for their students that don't have anything to do with the School Land Trust program. So we just need to ground ourselves in the fact that what we're doing here is for children. And in order for you to feel comfortable and be able to listen and ask questions tonight, instead of, I don't want you to feel like you've got to be taking copious notes, because all of this presentation is going to be posted on our website, along with a number of other supporting information. And I'm going to show you that as we kind of go through so that you'll know where to find it, and you don't feel like you have to be writing down a million things or about what did you just say. So this is a screenshot actually of the School Land Trust website, and the screen previously here shows the website address. So it's just schools.utah.gov/School Land Trust. Schools.utah.gov takes you to the State Board of Education website, where there's lots of information. And we now are going to be incorporated into that website, ours. So when you go there for the first time, this is what you'll see. And just so that you understand what you will find there, this menu here on the side that's encircled in purple, each one of those is a separate page and it has additional information on it that will be useful to you. So we're going to go through just a little bit of that as a heads up about where to find information you might be looking for. So this is that same list. It's just larger so that you can see the words. So the School Land Trust program just gives you background on the program. The next thing is timelines and due dates. And this is where you would go when you're creating a timeline for your council to understand what are the timelines in code, what are recommended timelines, and due dates that your council will need to meet. So that's where you would find that kind of information. On the tab called Councils is where you would find background information about elections, rules of order and procedure. We'll talk about a little bit later, but every council is supposed to have rules of order and procedure, and they're supposed to be posted on your school website, along with other website requirements. All of those lists you'll find there so that you can check on them and, check off, have I got this on my website? Have I got this? Have I got this? I need this. It looks like we're missing this. So that should be easy for you. The parent tab is basically background information for parents who would come to our website that has links that talks about the School Land Trust program, school community councils, the kinds of questions people who are not aware of the program or of councils might ask. The next thing that will be helpful to you is a tab called Resources. And you'd find here whoever it is in your district that we interact with. So sometimes you might call or send an email and say, what about this? And the answer would really come from your district as opposed to us, because districts are able to set their own timelines. They may have rules or policies that further define what we have. So that's where you would find the list of district contacts. There's some information there about digital citizenship and school safety. And if anyone ever is questioning you about a law or a rule, when they might say, well, where does it say that? The laws and the rules are all posted there so that you could find it. You may want to call us and say, where would I find that? So you don't have to be searching through it. We're happy to help that way. So you'll see, I'm going to come back to my school reports and councils so I can show you how that works. But training, the training tab is where you will find all of the trainings that we provide throughout the year. And when this training is over, we'll post this as well as associated documents so that you can find them again. Yeah, so let's go back up to my school reports, and I'm going to open what that looks like. So when you're on that page, when you're on that page and you click on my school reports, it takes you to a link, and you would click on that blue link that says School Land Trust Public Reports, and it opens a box that asks for criteria. And what you're actually doing is searching the data that's in the website. And when you tell the system what it is you want to know, then it will provide the report. So it's going to ask you the district, the school you care about, and you can look up any school or any district. The information is available to anybody publicly. So you choose the district, the school, and then the report year that you're interested in. There's going back 5 years. So if you want to say, well, who was on the council 5 years ago? You can select that and find out who was on the council 5 years ago. Then you select, then you click view report. So let me show you a little bit what that looks like. This is actually what it looks like. So you can see, you would click on each one of those and there's a drop-down menu and you would select it. And here's one that I filled out, which is too small for you to see. I selected Granite School District and Skyline High School, because that's where my kids went to high school. I selected the 1920 year and then a funding report. Then you have to click that little box that says I'm not a robot and then click view report. And this is what it displayed. So on a funding report, it shows the amount of money that was received each year for the past 5 years. And then when we have upcoming year funding, that enters that spot there on the end that has zeros in it. And using this format, you can pull up past final reports. You can see your current plan. You can pull up council members, this funding report, and you can pull it up specific to your school. So hopefully you'll find that to be helpful. I want to go back and show you this one thing that I put in the wrong place. I have created a list that will be on the website after tonight that kind of lists for you what you need to do as a chair. So it's kind of a checklist. There's too much information on it, but I just want you to know that it's going to look like this. It will say School Community Council chairs, recommendations and responsibilities, and that will be posted under the training tab so that you can find it and pull it up as reference. Those links there will take you to a particular document. So like part of the way down, it talks about review school website requirements. And if you click on that link, it will take you to a document that shows you what those requirements are. So let's see. Do you have any questions yet? If you have a question, if you put it in the chat box. Do you have questions yet, or should we move on? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so we'll keep going. So lots of times chairs are about being the chair, and oftentimes the chair is the person who drew the short straw, or sometimes the chair ends up being the person who was late to the first meeting and they got elected while they were out of the room. You know, all these kinds of things sometimes happen, and it can be scary for a chair to not understand what it is that you're responsible for. And basically, it's in two categories. You have the responsibility to lead the council, and then you also have the responsibility to facilitate and coordinate. Those are your two main responsibilities. It isn't your job to know everything that would ever be put on an agenda. It's not your job to know all the information, like when you have to do digital citizenship, you rely on experts to bring that information to you. It's not your responsibility to do all the work. It's your responsibility to lead and to facilitate. So to make sure that the work gets done, that people are sharing the load, that's the responsibility really of the chair. And then the responsibility of the committee then is to participate. It's their responsibility to represent whoever it was that elected or appointed them. So they have a responsibility too to help you get the work done. You had an election in your council meeting, they elected you to be chair. When someone does that, it means that they're going to support you. So we'll talk about how we can share the work in just a second. Okay, let's move to the next one. So we're going to go through place of the chairs just really briefly, and hopefully this will kind of set a framework for you so that it doesn't seem so overwhelming. The first thing that I always recommend council chairs to do is at one of your very first meetings to go around the room or around the table, or now we're mostly online, you would go around and have everybody introduce themselves. And I would ask them to include their experience on a council, their experience being involved in schools, what they do for a living, what their interests are. And if you know this information, it will help you when you are making assignments, because you will know who's comfortable taking minutes or who might be more comfortable and have real interest in school safety, or that introduces the council altogether. It also provides backup information to you when you are making assignments. So that's the first thing that I would recommend. At one of your very first meetings, you want to set the meeting schedule for the year. And that doesn't mean that it can't change, but you should have a meeting schedule posted on your website so that if there are people who are interested and want to listen or want to participate, they know when you're planning on meeting. If it turns out that you were planning on the second Tuesday of every month and it turns out to be Valentine's Day when you get to February, you can change the meeting. You just need to notice that the meeting has been changed. You're responsible to make sure that the members of the council are trained. Now, you're not the only person who's responsible for making sure that the training happens. The local board is responsible to provide training. We provide training. It's the principal's responsibility to also to make sure that training is provided. And there are lots of training opportunities, and people can be trained without ever leaving the house. On the website and periodically throughout the year, we will send out short little training videos that will help you with different things that have to happen during the year. For instance, recently I've been getting a lot of questions about digital citizenship, school safety, and a new similar requirement, the Positive Behaviors Plan, which is a new assignment the legislature gave councils in the last legislative session. And they're asking, so we're planning to do a short training, like it will be less than 5 minutes and it will be recorded. And you could show it at the beginning of a meeting, or you could send it out to your council members and say, please look at this 5-minute video before you come to the next meeting so that we can talk about digital citizenship, our responsibilities. But you should make a plan of how the council is going to be trained, because no one can do the work if they don't know what it is they're supposed to do. Then on the website, there are required postings. Now, this is the school website. On your school website, there should be a page for school community councils and school land trust. In some districts, it's kind of separated in a couple of different places. And it's more important that people can find it than where it is. But it should be easily accessible to any parent or in the community. And there's a list of those. It's not your responsibility to do the posting, but the council should make sure that those postings are there. And the reason for the postings is to keep the community, the parents, informed about what you're doing, and so that they can be involved. They can make recommendations to you. They might offer to be part of a special working group or a task force, but they need to know what you're doing. And then as you start out the school year, probably half of the people on the council are going to be new, and they will not have been involved in the discussion that you had in the spring where you prepared the plan. Now, there are 2 plans that you need to consider that are important for the council what's in them. And one of them is called, you'll hear it called TSSA or TSSP, and it means Teacher and Student Success Plan or Teacher and Student Success Act. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes, but that plan should be the overarching school improvement plan for the school. And the principal is responsible for preparing that plan, but the principal is also supposed to engage the school community council before they prepare the plan. And then the school land trust plan should be a subset of the teacher and student success plan. So that communication needs to happen. It should happen before the TSSA plan is prepared, so that when you get to trying to support the school, that TSSA, the overall school improvement plan, you as a council can prepare the academic subset of that plan. So it's important for you to know what's in it. They're supposed to be posted on the school website. And so you'll want to do that at one of your first meetings as well. Then, of course, it's always important in all of these what to do, when to do, how to do, is to remember that what we're trying to do is be focused on students. Sometimes we get wrapped up in process and forget why we're spending time doing all of this in the first place. And then it's important to remind the people on the council that they are representatives and that the council is a place to bring recommendations or concerns forward from the group that you represent. Many times, issues in districts or schools that historically were taken straight to the school board, a school community council has the ability to resolve it right there at the school level. Not everything, but sometimes. Okay, I'm going to stop here for just a minute and see if there are any questions. If you want to put anything in the chat box, I'll wait just a second to see if there's any questions about this first part. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we will move on. Okay, this is the part where we're going to talk a little bit about the teacher and student success plan. So I've indicated that with an umbrella because it's kind of the overarching plan at the school. A teacher and student success plan can have behavioral things in it. It could have safety things in it. It could have all kinds of things. The school land trust plan is the academic portion of the teacher and student success plan. The teacher and student success plan could have other academic components, but the school land trust plan has to be academic. So this teacher and student success plan can have non-academic components as well, because it's the overall plan of the school. So the school land trust plan could have in it, let's say, for instance, it could have literacy. It might have a mathematics component. It might have a graduation rate component, increasing graduation rates. Non-academic things could be digital citizenship, school safety, the positive behaviors plan, or other behavioral activities. The council does have responsibility for digital citizenship, school safety, and some involvement with the positive behaviors plan. In the case of the positive behaviors plan, this new requirement for councils, the positive behaviors plan, you may recall about a year ago, there was really great concern and lots of publicity about electronic cigarettes. And so the legislature talked about this a lot, and there was recognition that oftentimes the reason students are involved in these kind of behaviors is that they just need to have, they need to be encouraged to participate in positive behaviors so they don't go to detrimental kind of behaviors. The legislature asked that every school have a positive behaviors plan. And the sponsor of the legislation felt like, since parents and teachers are representatives at the school, that they should have input into the positive behaviors plan that the principal prepares. So once again, you're being asked for your input as you represent your communities. So that would be definitely a behavioral activity, correct? Digital citizenship is probably how you act responsibly on the internet, is probably a non-academic activity, as would be school safety. However, if you feel like you need one of those items to help support an academic plan, the board rule now allows councils to spend funding on those non-academic components if they support an academic plan. So let me just give you a couple of examples. The first one, let's talk about a high school. So a high school may have a goal to increase graduation rates at their school. And that is an academic, under board rule, that is an academic item. So you could set a goal around that. But as the council discusses why kids are not graduating, it turns out it's because they need some support services. Maybe they need a tracker that's going to make sure that they get to class, or somebody that's following up so they make sure that they're completing missed assignment. Those are all behavioral activities. But if a council feels like, in order to implement their plan, they need that behavioral component, they could have a behavioral component in their graduation, increasing graduation goal, and spend money for those people. Okay, let's take an elementary school, for example. So let's say in an elementary school, the elementary school has set a reading goal. And they also have decided that they are going to do some kind of staggered reading groups. And amongst the students, there is some teasing going on about which group people are in. If the council felt like instituting an anti-bullying, let's celebrate each other, and teach students how to do that, and felt like that would help students feel comfortable in the reading groups that they're in and be able to celebrate each other, that could be a component of their reading goal, even though it's behavioral. So hopefully that makes some sense. Now I'm going to see, okay, the part of the TSSP, this is in the chat box, the part of the TSSP that the council is responsible for is you're supposed to provide input to the principal as they prepare the plan. So whenever the principal, so that's something you would want to consider when you're creating your timeline. So when is the principal going to prepare that plan? And then you would want to, a few months out before he or she is preparing that plan, you would want to put that on as an agenda item and talk about, based on a data discussion, what is it that our students need? But your recommendations, when you're recommending the student success plan, doesn't have to be only academic. It could be non-academic as well, but you provide input into that plan. While you're doing that, you would be recognizing that ultimately your school land trust plan is going to support the teacher and student success plan. I hope that clarifies that a little bit. Councils have one more responsibility, and this happens in some councils, and other councils it doesn't. Sometimes local school boards will ask councils for their input on a decision that they are trying to make, because the councils are representative groups of the people in the community. This board may ask for your input, officially your input in a decision that they're trying to make. And the reverse is true. If you feel like there is something that the administration or the local school board or district needs to consider on behalf of students, you could take that to the school board as a recommendation from your community council. So that's another important interaction that can happen. Okay, we're going to talk about effective academic plans for just a second, but if you have other questions as we're going along, there are few enough of us, I think, that you could go ahead and put it in the chat box, and I will watch for it and then try to answer them as we go along. So this slide is just to indicate to you, when your school land trust plan is an academic plan, there are really three important parts to make sure that that plan is going to be effective. Because none of us want to be spending money, our scarce resources, on something that isn't going to positively impact the education of our kids. So every plan should start with a discussion about data. So the counselor should be provided with testing data, other kinds of data that are important to make decisions about students at the school. And you should have that, not just one test and not just 1 year, but it's important to kind of have several years and different kinds of measurements. We're at a little bit of a disadvantage the last 2 years because of COVID in the spring. The standardized tests, statewide standardized tests, were not given. And then the year before, you may recall, there were challenges with that testing process. So we're without 2 years of statewide data. Having said that, your school and your district has other testing mechanisms that can be used for you to determine what it is the students need. Teachers review this so that they know what they are going to be teaching. Principals review this so they know where they need to focus special attention on. That should be the basis for your plan. What is the need based on real information? And that will help you know how to measure it, so that at the end of the day, did the money we spend, the way we spend for kids? Then you send it to your local board, and the local board will review it to make sure you are using are research-based and programs that the board can support and believe will have a positive impact on students. And then the last part is just as important as the other two parts, and that is to make sure the plan is implemented with fidelity, which requires the council to do some review over the course of a year to see if you're on track, see if you're spending the money the way you said you wanted it to be spent, finding out if the reading aids feel like they're accomplishing the goal that they were asked to accomplish, those kind of interactions, so that you know over the course of a year. Part where hopefully it will help you a little bit. So you have responsibilities as the chair to make sure that they happen, and I've listed them here. You need to make sure that minutes are kept. It's important to have periodic financial reports. so that you know, is the plan being implemented? Maybe the plan was to hire 3 math aides, and the school was only able to hire 2. They could only get 2. Well, if you find out that that's the case and you're not going to be able to hire another math aide, then the council ought to get together and say, well, if we can't do that and our goal is math, how else can we help students be successful? And you can amend your plan and spend it a different way, even mid-year. Amendments are not difficult to make, but if you don't know that to spend, then you won't do anything about it. So someone who will provide a financial report periodically to the council, and it can be brief, but it will keep you on track. You need to make sure that what's on your school website is compliant with the law. We've already talked about that a little bit. Someone needs to establish a timeline so that you make sure you get the work done when it needs to be done, and be able to understand if someone, if a parent comes to you and is concerned about an issue and wants to bring it to the council, do you have time in the school year to address that need? So those are important things for you to consider when you are preparing that timeline. You need to know, what is our workload? Can we get it done? Can we take on additional things? Do we need a task force or a subcommittee to help us with the work? Every school is supposed to have what's called rules of order and procedure. And if you don't have those, we have a template on our website that you could take and create one. But I would assign someone to do that. It doesn't, because you're the chair, doesn't mean you have to take the minutes, make the financial report, check on the website, prepare the timeline, revise the rules, all of these things. Each one of those members of the committee can take one of those assignments, and it lessens the load for you. It engages them as being part of the council, and it kind of puts that puzzle together so that everybody has a piece, a role. It's also good to have a parent liaison between the PTA, or if you have a PTO at your school, because they're volunteer arm of the school. It's a good idea for you to be talking to each other and making sure that you're coordinating efforts and not competing, and supporting each other. And then you can appoint task forces or subcommittees. The chair of a task force or a subcommittee should be a member of the council. And so if I were the chair, at my very next meeting, I would sit down and say, these are needs that we have, and let people volunteer to take one of them. And if they don't volunteer, then you get to kindly ask them if they will do it, because it's not your job to do all of that. It's your job to coordinate it and make sure it happens. It's not your job to do all of it. Okay, we have another question. How do we find out how the money? Excellent question. Your principal, I would talk to first, but then you can go to your district business administrator. There are some districts that provide monthly reports on all expenditures to principals. And it's really easy to extract that one little school land trust expenditure from the report, so that you can report it back to the council. If the principal doesn't have it, the districts have business administrators, and you could go directly to the business administrator, and they should be able to provide for you a short little summary of where you are in expenditures. Excellent question. Thank you for that. Okay. So this is how to prepare for each one of your meetings. It is your responsibility to prepare the agenda, but you should do it with the principal. The principal may know things that you don't know that need to go on the agenda. And the principal or some other member of the administration is probably going to be involved in some of the agenda items. Like when you have the conversation about school safety, you're going to want a report from someone in the administration about what's currently happening related to school safety, so that the council then can decide what they're going to do to enhance school safety. So you're going to want to have a conversation with the principal. During the times when we were actually meeting together in person, this could happen in an in-person meeting. It also is very effective just in an email back and forth or a phone conversation. You're going to want to go back to that timeline you had someone prepare. You assigned someone to want to go back to the timeline and make sure that you have on the agenda what needs to be on the agenda to meet the timeline. Then you're also going to want to go back to those people you made assignments to. So if you made an assignment to someone to check on the website and make sure that everything is on the website that needs to be there, you want to include a report from that person on the agenda so that they can report back, so that you can remedy anything or just be really grateful that everything's up to date. Of course, the agenda needs to have the date, time, and place on it. It needs to be posted at least a week in advance. And it needs to indicate any action items. If you're planning on voting on the school land trust plan, it's good to put on the agenda action item, school land trust plan, or action item, adopting rule procedure. And then it's also important to include on it who is going to address that issue and the allotted time frame, and that will help you stay on task. So you would put approval of minutes, and I would give that 2 minutes. Discussion, data discussion. The time you do the data discussion may take up most of your meeting, and maybe you're going to allot that 30 minutes. So that when you get close to the time being up, if you feel like you need more time on that, the council can decide to continue and postpone the other agenda items to the next meeting, or however they want to handle it. But it's important for you to start on time, end on time, and keep the meeting moving along. Then a week before the school community council meeting, you need to make sure posts on the website, it posts the agenda with the draft minutes from the last meeting. And then both of those should be sent to the committee and any presenters you may have on the agenda. And then, of course, there's the school community council meeting. I have just one more item here, and then I'm going to open it up for any questions. So this is the part about conducting meetings, and sometimes this is the scariest part for chairs. But if you have an agenda to follow and you have assigned the agenda items to someone who can present that agenda item, then you'll find that what you're doing is managing the meeting as opposed to being the presenter, if that makes sense. So you're going to follow the agenda, try to stay on task, start and end on time. And the other part that's really important for chairs is that you should encourage everyone to participate in the discussion. Sometimes it's a good idea. There are always going to be people on a council, on any kind of committee, that are more vocal than others. But it doesn't mean that the people who are not as vocal don't have something to offer. They may have something very important that will play into your decision. So it sometimes is a good idea to just say, I think we need to understand how everybody feels about this, what your thoughts are. And you just go around and have everybody say briefly how they feel about that thing. And no one critiques. You don't critique their comment. Everybody just has an opportunity how they feel. And then after everybody has stated how they feel, then you can have a conversation with all of the viewpoints out on the table. We talked about action items need to be noticed on the agenda. And you need to take a vote because on some things you're asked what the vote was. And so you're going to want to record what the vote was in the minutes. And the other thing that's important is that when you're taking action, you need to have a quorum. So what is a quorum? A quorum is a majority of the members of the council. Sometimes people call and say, well, we had all of the staff meeting people there, but we didn't have a majority of parents there. That's not a quorum. Council is established. Every person on the council has an equal vote. So it's just a majority of the people on the council is a quorum. So if you have 9 people on your council, 5 people have to be there to vote. If you have 6 people on the council, you're going to have 4 people to take a vote. Are there questions about that? The question in the chat box, is there a list of what constitutes an action item that requires a vote? Yes, anything where the council is going to be taking any kind of action. So if you're wondering, I mean, sometimes you're going to have a discussion item, but there may be no action. It's better to list it as an action item in case you need to take a vote. So approval of the school land trust plan definitely is. If you were to do an amendment to your plan, that definitely is. If you are preparing, if you're preparing a digital citizenship plan that the council is going to implement, then that definitely is. If you're trying to decide if you want to take on an additional assignment or make a recommendation to your local board, you don't want to go to the board unless you have had a vote of the council to know that everybody, that the majority of the people feel that way. So hopefully that helps. The last part about this is that you can have a very relaxed discussion, or you may have to be more formal. And that generally has to do with if you have people coming to the meeting, because it's an open meeting, anybody can participate and attend. You have people who are taking over the conversation or interacting to the point where you can't get your work done, then you may have to go to more formal kind of a meeting. On action items, I for sure would make sure that that is formal. You should have somebody who places the motion, which simply means state what you want to have happen. I move that we approve the school land trust plan as we've discussed today in our meeting. Someone should second it, and the second only indicates that there's somebody else in the room who agrees with that motion. Then you open it up for discussion. You may have already had all the discussion that you need by the time the motion is placed, and then you take the vote, and then you're going to want to record the vote. Okay, so I am going to turn this off, and we've got just a few minutes left. We've got about 10 minutes left to see if you have any questions. I'm going to open my video. And okay, so are there any other questions? If you want to ask it verbally, you can unmute yourself and ask a question, or raise your hand and I will unmute you, one or the other. Let me see if I can see everybody. I think I've got to close my chat box, and then I can. So next to your name, if you've not ever done this before, if you click on it, you'll see a little hand. You can raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself. Are there any questions about any of this? It's clear as mud. Okay. The other thing that I think I would let you know is that the training that Natalie is doing at the very same time, it's going at the same time as this one, is all about school community council responsibilities. And if you've got questions about that, it will be posted online. So if you're wanting to know about that kind of thing specifically, that would be great. You could, does anybody have a question? If you want to turn on your camera and just wave at me, I'll take your question. Or maybe you have all of your questions answered the rest of the evening or until the next meeting to do whatever it is that you want to do. No questions. Okay. You have a question? Go ahead.
I was just going to make a statement. I teach online, so I understand the lack of feedback that you're having right now. But I just wanted to say that information was really helpful, and I appreciate you putting that together for us. And my only question was about the data. I'm on two councils, one's at a high school, so the data, there's a larger set, so they're able to share more specific data. But I'm wondering when you're at, and I'm on an elementary school, so the set for that, the data set's smaller. If we wanted to get into some demographic kind of data, is that appropriate as a council? And is that something that's passed?
Those are excellent questions. So the only thing that councils need to be careful of is the part about when a council receives any kind of data, whether it's demographic or testing data or behavioral kinds of data. I'm on a task force right now that's creating what they're calling a common needs assessment. And we're going through all the different kinds of assessments and data. And my gosh, there is so much. But when we get that together, that's going to be available to councils. And anything that's in there is available to a council to help you make a decision. The only thing councils need to be careful of, and this is not your job, it's the job of the principal, is to make sure that you don't receive any information that is personally identifiable, right? So if you've got a subgroup of kids at the school that where you might be able to guess who got that test score, that is not appropriate for a council member. But the overall information that you'll receive, any of it is certainly appropriate. When you start having the conversation about safety or digital citizenship or positive behaviors, all that kind of data information should be made available to council so you can make good decisions. Yeah. I think I've got another chat. Let me see.
Hey, Paula, I've got a question if I could.
Sure, absolutely.
This is Chris Michael. I'm in Woods Cross Elementary, but for this year, typically our funds, we can carry over X amount of dollars to the next year. I don't remember what that percentage is exactly, but with this year being so unusual with COVID, and this is kind of one of the questions that's in the chat, are we going to get any guidance as to being able to carry over additional funds above and beyond what the typical small percentage is? Just because a lot of our things might have gone towards training or doing kind of classroom activities or things like that that really aren't available right now. And, you know, we need to start talking about, do we need to edit or amend our plans? But we're just curious, is there anything that has been said or is in discussions over, you know, how much we really need to spend of our funds this year? Or we can save them until things return to normal?
Those are really excellent questions, Chris. So thank you for doing that. And I just want to point out that I have two grandchildren attending schools in Woods Cross. So I'm grateful to anybody who's serving on a council in the Woods Cross neighborhood. Thank you. So the question is a really good one. We know that at the end of last school year, there is going to be large carryover from last school year because there were things that were planned at the end of the year that just didn't happen. Councils were not really in a very good place to even know how to hold a council meeting to amend a plan or do anything else. So we know there's going to be carryover, and you will want to know that right now. So that if you want to amend your plan to deal with COVID issues right now, distance learning, you could put money towards distance learning because it's about academics. So you could spend that carryover money this year as you in an amended plan. So let me make that part clear. First of all, there is an issue with carrying over more than 10% in a given year, but it's about, the problem is if you carry over large amounts for several years in a row. Because if you do that, it indicates you didn't really implement the plan that was approved, right? So that's really the issue, is that you didn't implement the plan as it was approved. If you find that you need to carry over money from this year to next year, you would be expected to provide an explanation. The district may not want you to carry over a large amount of money. So that's partly a conversation with the district. But for last year and the upcoming school year, there definitely will have to be some flexibility because we're all having to deal with COVID issues. I hope that answers the question. Does that answer it, or is it muddy it?
I think so. I think it's the main thing was, if we know we've budgeted for large expenses this year that just we aren't going to be realized because of where we are. Were we able to start communicating? I guess that's more of a district thing, just to kind of start now saying, look, we had X amount of dollars planned. We can't do it this year. We'd like to continue it, but okay, we'll deal with that individually.
Yeah, I think so. So for instance, if you wanted to do professional development, you still may want to do that professional development, but it doesn't make sense to do it in this setting. You could make a case for carrying it over. You also could make a case for students right now have needs that are not being met due to COVID, and maybe you would want to consider spending money for those issues. But it's really a council and a district decision. I've got another question here about code of conduct. Anything related to that is something you would want to put in your rules of order and procedure, and it certainly would be appropriate the council to adopt what that means, and that would be entirely up to your school. I don't know exactly what to tell you about COVID rumors in the area. That's probably, if it's a concern for the council, however, you may want to take it up as a council and simply let the administration know that you want them to provide guidance. You want them to let your principal, or not principals, your parents and faculty know what are the facts surrounding it, and that's a possible way to help mitigate the COVID rumors. But certainly you can put something in your rules of order and procedure. The council will adopt it, and then they have got something that they're expected to follow because they all shared in adopting it. Another question is it appropriate for the council to survey teachers or get their want needs for students, or restricted only to the teachers on the SEC? No, you can do a survey of teachers and get a sense of, sometimes in elementary schools especially, you may have one teacher who represents one age group, right? and it may not be representative if they haven't gone back to the faculty and done this themselves. You may want more information. You can certainly do that. There isn't anything preventing you from doing that. The only thing that ever prevents you from surveys is students. There's certain student surveys that you can't do without approval, but the principal will know about that. Okay, I think we're at 7 o'clock, and there is another sharing session that's going to happen right after this. If you're interested in participating in that, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the council, and thank you for being here tonight. Please know that you can call or email any of us at any time. Our contact information is on the website, and we're just grateful for all that you do and willing to help in any way that we can. Thank you.